Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me and thank you for your interest in this hour-long workshop about boundaries. This workshop is based on the book Boundaries by Drs. Cloud and Dr. Townsend. It's a great book to have in your library so that you can study further this interesting subject of boundaries, how to create, how to define, how to maintain healthy boundaries. First of all, we're going to talk about the physical boundaries, the boundaries that are easy to see, easy to understand. Boundaries define us, and they define what is me and what is not me, or what is you and what is not you. Knowing what I am to own and take responsibility for gives me freedom, says the Doctor's Cloud and Townsend on page 31. So let's look at physical boundaries. First of all, they are visible, they are marked by a fence, landscaping, trees, and detailed on a property deed. Boundaries are established by walls that divide private space from public or common areas. And the first illustration that appears in the booklet is a bird's eye view of looking down on a small one-bedroom apartment floor plan. So we can see by looking at that the wall to the bedroom defines our bedroom and separates us from the next apartment. And the reason I chose such a small square footage to show in this illustration is that I know that all of us in our younger years started off in a small one-bedroom apartment. We remember those first new homes that we nested and created for ourselves with fond memories, and we can all identify. So my purpose was using something that a majority of us could identify with and understand, rather than putting a floor plan of a multi-million dollar mansion that we may not even ever be able to walk into, little understanding the boundaries. So there's interior doors that close off the bathroom, for example, and the bedroom. And there's also a front door, and that door leads out into the hallway, into the common areas. Physical boundaries are easy to define and manage. Many, such as land and parcels, are governed by county and state laws, and each parcel is recorded. Rental properties are managed by rental and leasing agreements and include rules for the use of the common areas and regulations regarding the rented space. So once inside our rented space, that is our space, and we are free and at liberty to do what we want in that space as long as it doesn't break the law and as long as it is by the governing rules of the rental agreement and the contract that you signed. Signs also identify and indicate boundaries. The common sign that we all have seen: private property, no trespassing. Other signs will say those who trespass will be prosecuted. In other words, this is private property. You do not have permission to cross or walk on that property. And if you choose to do that, you have broken the laws. I, as the property owner, am able to call the authorities and have you removed. Or I can simply put up a no trespassing sign that's usually in red and big bold letters, and that will allow you to realize, oh, I am not supposed to be here without an invitation. Fences, gates, barriers, and signage visibly establish where one property ends and the other property begins, making maintenance of physical boundaries relatively easy. And if there are no fences, as they are on my 4/10 of an acre, I do not have any fencing. But if you were to fly over in a small plane or with a drone, you could easily see the boundary lines because you can see where my neighbors in the back have stopped mowing their lawn and where my lawn began, and the neighbors on either side the same way. There may be trees planted, but there are no fences separating my property from my neighbor's property, and yet the boundaries are visible. And in a deed, the boundaries are determined by degrees and measurements. So my deed might read 42 degrees, point 6 south by 52 degrees, and that explains the boundary. And that is in my county's courthouse in recorded property records, and that is public knowledge. A person can search, get my property number, and see who owns my property. They will see my name. A boundary tells who is in control of the property, and it gives the freedom to do what you want with your property within regulations, within laws. It creates a responsibility, and that responsibility we learned when we were in our very first homes or very first apartments. We were now adults. We had to take care of those um, conditions on the inside of our apartment. Personal boundary. So this becomes a little more interesting because personal boundaries are intangible and they are hard to see. And yet these personal boundaries are ever present and define who you are. My boundaries define who I am. These boundaries define what is me and what is not me. To Cloud and Townsend, it is a very simple explanation. In other words, these boundaries indicate where you end and someone else begins. An important example of a personal boundary is your physical skin. I found that so interesting when I was studying this project. It never occurred to me that my outer skin was part of my physical boundaries. We are responsible, as we are in our homes responsible, we are responsible for what goes on in our personal boundaries. We are responsible for what we hear, what we see, what we taste, touch, feel, eat, and think. In other words, we're responsible for the maintenance of this wonderful body that we were assigned to, wrapped in human skin, to show where my boundaries end and where the rest of the room begins. Or if there were other people in with me in this room, where they would begin is where I have ended. So, because we are responsible for this wonderful body, we are encouraged by society and our friends and our doctors to eat right, to exercise regularly, to get plenty of sleep. These behaviors keep our bodies healthy. And remember, we're responsible. We are given freedom to control our boundaries, our property, but that freedom equals responsibility. And so we are responsible. I am responsible for this body. Nobody else is. I can't blame anybody else for what is going wrong in my body because I haven't maintained it or done my exercise properly or have eaten too much ice cream. We also, as responsible people of these personal bodies, can seek help, professional help, in establishing our healthy boundaries. Boundaries, both physical and natural, define what is not our property and what we are not responsible for. For example, I am not responsible for you watching this video. I am thrilled that you are here. I am honored that you chose to spend this time listening to me and watching me speak. But I am not responsible for you, as you are not responsible for me. I am answerable to you because you hope that I make sense, that this workshop was important, that it was worth your time. Boundaries establish and reaffirm that we are not responsible for other people. And that particular sentence is written in big, bold, capitalized letters in this booklet because we are not responsible for other people. Now, as a woman, as a mother, yes, when I was a young mother, I was responsible for those children that I birthed and were placed in my care. But as my sons grew and became adults, I was no longer responsible for them. They are in their 60s now. I cannot tell them what to do. They are not my responsibility. I am my responsibility. They love me. I love them. I worry about them. But we are only responsible for ourselves. An important personal boundary tool is words. Words set boundaries, like the word no, which is a complete sentence, by the way. And when we speak those words that describe our boundaries and establish our boundaries, then we are honoring and being thoughtful to other people. Because it used to be we would just expect people to read our minds. That is so unfair. We can't read each other's minds, but I can hear what you say. I can read what you wrote. I understand the words you are speaking, or I will ask for clarification. But words help establish our boundaries, and that's our responsibility, our boundaries. Other boundaries are truth that brings us safety. Safety is critical for our mental and physical beings. Physical distancing from harm and danger, creating emotional distancing, and taking time off from a person or location. I spoke this morning, I gave this workshop both on Zoom and in person to women, many of who are survivors of intimate partner violence. They understood this very well because they know how important it is to walk away from conflict, to escape, and to become safe. Boundaries establish your life, your freedom to control, and create the responsibility of your decisions. And there is a flyer in this particular workshop that I put in, and I'll show you a picture of it. This person, and then underneath this person's picture, it says, the only people who get upset when you set boundaries are the ones who benefited from you when you had no boundaries, when you had none. So those who had once taken advantage of your no boundary lifestyle will have to move on and trespass on someone else's property. when you get through establishing your boundaries and reinforcing them and making them stronger and more clear, and then maintaining them. And then in bigger, bolder letters in the booklet, it says this statement: setting boundaries is not selfish. It is not selfish. And if you think that is selfish because you're responsible for what you think, please change that thinking, because that thinking is harmful. Perhaps you were told once upon a time that you were very selfish. Well, this is today. This is the year 2025, and we only have 73 days left in 2025. So it's time to kind of adjust that thinking and realize it is not selfish to set your boundaries, but it is self care and thoughtfulness to others. Remember, we don't expect others to read our minds, so we verbalize or communicate in writing or American Sign Language, however you have to communicate, so that your boundaries are clearly understood by others. And although they may not be seen, they are understood. You care enough for others to be honest about your feelings and your boundaries. All right, a little iced tea. When you set your boundaries, it sometimes feels mean. It feels foreign. It's something perhaps that you have not done before. But that's okay. Try to erase that mean label from setting boundaries, because it's self-care. The first step in successful boundary setting is to love yourself, love in big, bold letters, love yourself enough to want to have boundaries. Self-love and self-worth are critical, important tools in aiding you to set your boundaries. Getting to know and value yourself is a wonderful healing journey for those of you who have suffered trauma, who fear intimacy, who still don't feel quite safe enough to live alone or live in a space that no one else is helping to guard. It's a great healing journey. And trust me, you will survive. And it will be a good healing process because you will be stronger as a result. Surround yourself, these are more tools to use, with positive affirmations. Remember, if you were in an partner, intimate partnership that was violent or abusive, there was not many positive affirmations around. There was criticism and yelling and anger and frustration and all of those emotions. So now, because you're responsible for your personal body and your personal safety and your personal space, then you can fill it. And I suggest, and Cloud and Townsend suggest, using positive affirmations. Develop positive muscle memory. Remember when we were in those abusive relationships, when we were told how dumb and stupid we were, how worthless we were, how fat we were, or how skinny we were, or we were too tall, or we were too short, or nothing worked. And remember how we ended up feeling about ourselves? That same way, because we were told by our parents, by our aunties, by our friends, and then by our partners. So now it's our job, our responsibility, because we're learning to love ourselves. We're learning to feel worthy enough to take care of ourselves. So now we can put positive affirmations everywhere. I was telling the workshop this morning what I did and still do. I go to the cosmetic department and I buy the most inexpensive lip liner, and I use that to color in the corners of all the mirrors in my house. And I have plenty of mirrors, many mirrors, at least one in every room. It's not because I spend time looking at myself. I like the light that the mirrors reflect from outside and reflect other objects. And up in the corner of all my mirrors currently is the phrase uncommon favor with an exclamation mark. And that was preached to me one Sunday, and it struck home so deeply. And I came home and I wrote that on the corners of my mirrors. So in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth and putting my makeup on, or even when I'm cleaning my mirrors, the lip liner doesn't come off that easily. So it can stay through your application of glass cleaners. But I look up at that and I say, yes, that is absolutely correct. And I've had many, many blessings fall on me and my home since I've been in Georgia these past 8 years. And it is because I expected uncommon favor. I expected those blessings, and I am receiving uncommon favor. And it's even a privilege to being here with you. So, what the doctors tell us in their book is believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Setting boundaries is not being selfish. You are being a good steward of what you are responsible for. And in this growth process that we've all gone through, that many of us are still going through, we realize that we have spent much of our lives guarding the feelings of someone else rather than guarding our own feelings. As women, we have that nurturing DNA in our bodies, and we just feel, and we are told by society. And as old as I am, I remember when women's place was in the home and that you just raised children. You didn't even think of a career if you were a normal person in the 1950s and the 1940s. It's a little different now, but we still have spent many of our years, months, and days worrying and guarding other people's feelings rather than guarding our own feelings. And let me tell you in big bold letters what Dr. Cloud and Dr. Townsend stated: other people's feelings are not your job. That's pretty startling, isn't it? Because it just seemed like other people's feelings were your responsibility. They are not. Your feelings are your responsibility. Nobody else's feelings are. They choose to feel the way they feel. Now, if you have said something that has hurt their feelings unintentionally, well, you know the process. I'm so sorry. I said that too boldly or loudly or grossly. Please forgive me. That was not my intention to disturb your feelings. But it's not our job. We've got a big enough job taking care of this body that we've been assigned to. All right. What stops us from building boundaries? The doctors ask in their book. What stops us? Fear of the loss of a relationship or a loss of a friendship. All right? Fear is an emotion. Fear is a feeling. Fear is real. Fear is something that we create within ourselves based on our thoughts, based on a touch of reality. But yes, there is a fear because a loss of a relationship needs a change. And, humans don't like change. But It can be a reason for not building boundaries. Fear of conflict. None of us want conflict. And those of us who have faced and lived through trauma know that the first thing we wanted to do is run. We didn't want to sit down and have an adult conversation over a conflict. And you who have been in abusive situations and relationships know that there's very little adult conversing going on. It's screaming and yelling and name calling and just all kinds of other stuff. But there is fear of conflict, and that's understandable. So we get to work on that fear and see what we can do to stop the conflict, be away from the conflict. Remember, it's also okay to ask for professional help. And then the third thing that keeps us from setting healthy and maintaining good boundaries is guilt, the gift that keeps on giving. And we put so much guilt on ourselves, and then society puts guilt on us as well. And our parents, no matter how old they are or how old we are, there's always that guilt game, that guilt trick. So, those are three things to work on. Those are barriers to having good, healthy boundaries for yourself. The doctors remind us that many of us have put all of our energy trying to make other people happy, and we forgot ourselves. Remember, taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's called self-care. Stop feeling guilty about that right now. And then there's a flyer that I included in the booklet that you can cut and paste and hang on your refrigerator. It is not your job to be everything to everyone. That's something to ponder, isn't it? That's a good affirmation. It's a good, clear picture. It is not your job to be everything to everyone. Your job, take care of you. Our path of self-discovery and self-care is our responsibility while carefully guarding our hearts. And at this point, I'm going to stop because I stopped at the workshop this morning as well. Nowhere in this booklet does it state, and nor in Dr. Cloud and Dr. Townsend's book, does it state that this is going to be easy. So I say to you, it's not going to be easy, but take it a little step at a time. And when you stumble, don't pick on yourself. Don't be mean to yourself. Don't be horrible to yourself. Say, okay, we'll try that again tomorrow. And I'm going to try to be stronger tomorrow. So the power and control that was established in your life in a traumatic relationship did not happen overnight. Little steps, little degrees, little increases that were really hard to even see and realize until it was too late. So be gentle with yourself. Be firm. Make sure to try each day to work on more boundaries and establishing positive language, and then working on affirmations to yourself. It will work. You will get there. It's a lifelong process. I'm still learning about boundaries. I am so far from perfect. I may talk a good story, but I've learned a lot in these years that I have lived. But I've also learned I will never be perfect, but I have learned to take care of myself and value myself. And I have learned to say the word no without guilt. So, in our hearts, because we're guarding our hearts through this life process, each of us hold the following things in our hearts: our core values, our thoughts, our feelings, our passions, our sins and weaknesses, our histories and families of origin, our strengths and our gifts. My 7 items are different from yours, but we hold them in our hearts. I have sins. I told you I was not perfect. I do not dwell on them, but they're there. And in our support groups for domestic violence survivors, we teach that could have, should have, would have are not words we use. I cannot change my past. I can pretend that it didn't exist, but I'm still holding parts of it in my heart. I can't change my past, but I have moved forward from my past and I don't dwell on my past. I live this day because I know another day, or I pray another day is coming tomorrow. And I don't waste any time in this day worrying about what I did 50 years ago because I can't change it. That makes sense. And I also don't concentrate on those weaknesses that I possess. They are smaller than they used to be because I've gotten stronger. But positive affirmations help me get through each day. I don't watch lots of news. I keep my thoughts to myself, but I also am proud to say I take much better care of myself now in this decade than I did 50 and 60 and 70 years ago. So these 7 items that I mentioned, they make up who we are and they guide us into who we want to be. In other words, I looked at the mistakes from my 30s and 40s and 50s. I said, those weren't really any fun. They may have brought me some kind of joy or lust or love at some point, but I don't really think I want to do those again. I'm going to tuck those away and I'm going to see what I can do to be different going forward, wiser, smarter, stronger, self-assured. And that's what we work on every day to build. And the other thing is to set you want to accomplish. What do you want to be when you grow up? I ask myself that every day. So think about those things that have held you back. Think about those things that you've tripped over and stumbled over. And then say to yourself, okay, I'm going to move forward. And I'm going to step around those potholes in this next week or in this next month or in this next year or even tomorrow. And then there's another flyer that you can cut out of the booklet and paste on your refrigerator. If it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. If it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. So when you encounter something that you're considering doing, how much peace is it costing? Is it going to be really expensive? And if it is, do you want to really pay that price? And we must learn to say no. The doctors suggest that we ask ourselves what it cost us to say yes when we really wanted to say no. And we talked about that in the workshop this morning. So I pose that to you. Right now, I'd like you to speak the word no. Remember, it's a complete sentence. It's the second shortest word in the whole English language. No. 2 letters. I want you to say it 3 times with strength and with positiveness and not with anger or frustration. Just your solid no. All right, take a deep breath. No, no, no. So we need to build muscle memory on those 2 letters, how to say that without feeling guilty. And we talked about this morning, we said typically in ourselves, our first response that comes to our mind if somebody asks us to do something is, yeah, I can do that. So my thought was, and it may not work for you, but what if your automatic first response in your mind was no? And then you weighed what it would cost you to say yes. Maybe it's help that another person has asked for. And maybe that's only going to cost you 10 minutes of your time or a $10 bill. So there's your decision because you're in charge of you. You can say, yeah, I can do that for you. Or I can stay an extra half hour tonight at work. That, as you thought about it, won't be that difficult. I'm not competing. I didn't promise my family I would be there. I don't have dance practice or I don't have to take the kids to a soccer game. I can do that for you. Or, I'm sorry, no, I can't. Maybe next time. So we've got to think about maybe no should be our first thought and then counteract that with yes after you've weighed what it's going to cost to say yes. Just like other muscle memory, we must develop the muscle and strength to say no. Here are some skills for boundary building and muscle memory. Monitor your lies. What does that mean? Maybe somebody wanted you to go out for a drink or a cup of coffee after work, and you said, you didn't really want to go. You don't particularly like this person that well. And you said, no, I can't tonight. I've got laundry to do, or I'm getting my hair done. Okay, that wasn't the truth. But we use those little lies. I mean, a lie is a lie is a lie, but those little lies to soften our nose. So monitor your lies. Use the word no every day, even if it's just in practice. Stand in the mirror. Look at unfavored, un, unlimited favor, or whatever you write on your mirror. Look in the mirror and say no to yourself. No, I'm not going to say yes every time. No, I'm not going to be a pushover anymore. That builds that muscle memory. Find out who you are giving your power to and why. And when someone asks you for something, ask if they can provide it for themselves. Sometimes we must have tough conversations with people when they cross our boundaries. We must have tough talk with those who are toxic, controlling, and or irresponsible. These talks must come from a non-judgmental, loving place, but they must be direct as well. And I'll step in with an explanation here. We know in power and control abusive situations, you are probably not going to have a tough conversation easily with someone who is so toxic. This may lead to more abuse, it may lead to physical harm. But I'm talking after you've gotten out of that situation and you're building boundaries. You're going to have some tough conversations. Could be with your relatives, it could be with your coworkers or your neighbors or members of an organization that you belong to. They're tough, but they are set, they are non-judgmental. Don't miss that word that was in the sentence. And they are loving. But they must be direct. What do I mean by loving? Telling the truth is love, and it must occur in these conversations. Remember, we are to love everyone, even our enemies. So we are approaching this in a loving, non-violent, not revengeful, not arrogant, not with loud, hideous voices. These are tough conversations, but your voice doesn't have to be tough. It just needs to be direct and firm and honest and truth. The truth is, I no longer drink, or the truth is, I no longer smoke. I don't feel comfortable when I go into those places with you where there's too much alcohol, or there's too much drugs, or there's too much smoking. I don't feel comfortable. It isn't that I don't not enjoy your company, I just don't enjoy those places. And because I am trained myself to take care of myself, I will not be able to go with you. Now, that was honest and it was non judgmental. I'm not telling that person not to drink or not to use drugs. That person is in charge of their own selves, remember? I spoke from a loving place. I was honest. I didn't make a big deal out of it, but it was truth in a loving way. And if that person does not take that truth, then that's a situation that you'll probably have to step away from, perhaps. Or they will, because they aren't comfortable with your new boundaries. They liked you before when you went and did everything that they wanted you to do. At this point, I want to be firm. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are not places where you build high walls and secure yourself and escape from society as a hermit. That isn't what boundaries are. No, no. They're walls that you put up, but those walls have gates, and the gates open and they close and they lock. So you can open that gate or open that door and let that person in or those people in if you feel comfortable enough to do that. And if you want to do that. And if once they're in, they misbehave, gate opens and the bad goes out. All right. So your boundary walls are firm and in place, and maybe people can't see them like they can see this wall behind me. But there's a gate, there's a door. The gate is locked or the gate is open. You decide. You're in charge. It's your boundary and your gate. There's a flyer here. It says walls keep everybody out. And we are created to be relational people. So that's not a good thing. Boundaries teach people where the doors are. It's also important to understand at this point in our study the difference between hurt and harm. A truthful conversation may cause hurt feelings. Remember whose feelings you're in charge of? Yours. You're not responsible for those other people's feelings. But these conversations and boundaries should never be harmful. No, we do not set boundaries as methods of revenge to get back at people. No, absolutely not. Boundaries are set to keep ourselves safe and secure. And they identify who we are, where we are, and what we want. You are not responsible for how other people feel, but you are responsible for any harm. So if there are crosswords, that words were spoken and you really didn't want to say it that way, and once you heard it, it didn't sound like you were feeling, it sounded harsh and harmful. Apologize. That sounded harsh to me when I said it. It didn't sound that harsh when I thought it inside. Please forgive me. This is what I meant. Let me explain myself. And then another saying at the bottom of this page in the booklet. I would rather adjust my life to your absence than adjust my boundaries to accommodate your disrespect. All right, the final part of this workshop talks about boundaries in the workplace. And I'll just do some highlights. It's something that you can study because I don't want to keep you longer then you were willing to stay with me. But it is important. Those of us who work, even those of us who work part time, have to be also aware of boundaries in our workplace. Those of you who work full time, 8-hour days, that's a third of your day. And you're spending a third of your day sleeping, hopefully. So the other third of your day, the remaining third, should be with family and friends for relaxation and so forth. So boundaries are important in the workplace. And the workplace boundaries include physical, personal, emotional, and financial aspects of our work lives. It's critical that you have learned the importance of self care by now in this workshop. Self respect, respecting others. It is vital to have those honest, boundary setting conversations with coworkers, managers, and the decision makers at your job. This process, and I will stress this, and Doctors Cloud and Townsend stressed it as well. This process does not give you permission to not do what you were hired to do, but it does prevent future trespass of your boundaries if you are willing at this point to work on your workplace boundaries. And that's after you have established firmly and have healthy and wonderful boundaries that are easy for you to maintain. So that's the first step. That's the first part. Now that that's done, now you can look at your workplace. What if people just stop by your desk and leave things and throw trash on the floor beside your desk and walk on and leave their old dirty coffee cups, or the boss I had in San Diego would drop his old soggy cigar in my wastepaper basket. And it was just so disgusting, rude, and disrespectful from my point of view. But I never said anything to him. I was very, very young. One of my first jobs. Of course, I was terrified of him. But what if we said to our coworkers, look, I want to have a heart to heart talk with you. This desk area is my boundary. This is where I work. I want it neat and clean. I don't want your trash on my floor. I don't want your soggy cigars in my wastepaper basket. I don't want you rifling through my desk, getting my pens and post-it notes for your work. So, can we agree that I am the queen of this little area? This little kingdom is mine in this workplace. Can we agree? That's what I'd like from you. Okay? Because I don't do that to your desk either. So let's make a pact. Let's make a contract. It is very vital to care for yourself in the workplace when you are doing the job that you were hired to do. Disownership, not taking responsibility for what is ours. And there is also a tendency in the workplace to blame another as a key problem for work. Now, was I blaming my boss or my coworkers for the trash on the floor? No, I was just sitting there grumbling about it. And I would pick it up and grumble in my mind because I didn't care enough for that other person to be honest and truthful with them without harming them. What's one issue when we are at the workplace? We are saddled with another person's responsibility. I swear in every office that I've ever been in, and I know that you've been in many, many yourselves, there's always one person. Now, one person that really doesn't want to do their job. All they want's their paycheck. They don't want to be responsible for anything. They don't want to do anything. They would rather just sit there and scroll on their phones or whatever. And sometimes their responsibility gets shoved on us. And so let's ask our coworkers when they ask us to do their tasks, no, I'm unable to do that. I have a whole desk full of things myself. And if we continually do that, that worker will get the attention of the manager of that department or the decision maker, because no longer is the rest of the office picking up that workload. Yes, things are going to slow down. Yes, things may stumble, but hopefully that worker will be corrected or replaced so that you can do your job and they will do theirs. If a coworker is angry, that anger cannot hurt you as much as their poor work habits can. So if you tell them, no, I can't, they get angry, hey, that's their feeling, remember? You're not in charge. You were not responsible for their anger. You were responsible for your own boundaries. Set your boundaries, what you are defining, what you are responsible for, and then stick to them. If asked to do something, say no. If they get angry, have empathy for their anger, but don't fight back with anger, because we know what that's like. Yeah, we don't have to do that. We don't have to work ourselves up and destroy our peace in order to fight back to their anger. Don't get hooked in that game. Don't justify why you're not doing their work for them. A coworker may genuinely need some extra help. Make special concessions for that coworker. Good organizations operate in a loving manner. Doing favors is part of life. Enabling is not. The next issue to consider is too much overtime. All right, so that is an issue, and it's up to you to decide how much overtime you are willing to do and make sure that it doesn't destroy your health or your family life or the other things. The result of too much overtime is burnout, and it's feeling that you're in bondage to that job, a job that you can't afford to lose. So, what should you do? Talk with your manager. I can only handle this much overtime. Review your job description, and if one doesn't exist, then ask for one. You need in writing what they expect you to do. Make an appointment with your boss and have a discussion. And I used to be an entrepreneur. I used to own my own business. And I understand when you hire more people, your expenses go up and your profit goes down. And in this economy, what we see going on is people are expected to do 1.5 times what they used to do. But it's up to us to set our boundaries and let them know what you can healthily accomplish, what you are willing to accomplish without destroying your health. And then you may decide, I can't be here forever. So what are you going to do? You can't afford to walk out. Are there other jobs available where you could earn more and maybe be treated as disrespectfully as this one? Don't know, but prepare. You may need to go to night school. You may need to take online classes that will give you more certification, that will improve your resume, so that if this management company that or management doesn't understand your boundaries, you will be able to remain healthy and go to a better job, hopefully, because you've improved your skills. You've made sure in looking at your desk and the job description, you are doing your job and then some. You're not sloughing off. Remember, your job overload is your responsibility and your problem. I know that's tough to take, isn't it? Set limits on yourself. Be honest with yourself. Know what you can do and what you cannot do. Set priorities, set goals to achieve. Don't get sidetracked by unimportant things. Say no to the unimportant and set priorities on how much time you're willing to spend. You have difficult coworkers. Again, it's setting boundaries. You cannot change another person. End of story. They can change themselves if they want. You cannot. In my second marriage was ended in an attempt on my life, 4 years of physical and mental and emotional abuse. Nancy Nurse was going to fix him. Well, guess what? Nancy Nurse can't fix anybody. She has a hard enough time taking care of herself. Nancy Nurse failed in tasks that she never should have been assigned to herself. It was a flaw. It was a mistake. I won't do that again. I learned my lesson. But we cannot change other people. So there will be people that we encounter in a workplace we just don't quite jive with. What do? Have tough conversations, or see if you can get your desk moved, or see if you can move your desk to face a window instead of face that person. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be revengeful. You have to be adult. You don't have to get angry, but there are things that you can do. And if that person constantly upsets your emotions and your feelings and disturbs you, remember, we're responsible for our emotions and our reactions. So maybe there's some things that we can do. Count to 10. Tell a funny joke to yourself. Take a deep breath. Go to the restroom, come back, get a drink of water. Workplace pointers. Workplace should be supportive, safe, and nurturing, and should support the employee in work-related ways. It should not be a substitute for family. That emotional support should occur outside the workplace. Establish boundaries so that work is kept out of the home. We know, we've read stories, we've seen movies. We know what happens when we bring our work home. And I was guilty of that. As an operations manager of a small real estate firm, and we managed commercial and residential properties in Seattle and Las Vegas, I was on call 24/7. I often brought my work home with me, or my work followed me home. I was number 3 on the line that the fire department had. So if I got a call in the middle of the night that a fire alarm was going off in one of my buildings, I knew that the other 2 people ahead of me, the owner and the senior property manager, were out of town. Guess whose job it was to get up, get dressed, race down there, get into the building with my code card, and then get to the fire alarm system and shut it off. Because we determined, the fire department and I, that this was a false alarm. There was no fires in that building. But your boundaries should be strong enough. You should be able to walk away from your job and go home. Make sure that your boundaries are strong enough so that others are not defining you. I'll repeat that. Make sure your boundaries are strong enough that others are not defining you. You get to define you. I don't get to define you. Nobody else does. You get to. Ideally, you will find a workplace that fits your passions and your strength. Be accountable for what you do and take ownership of how you feel, what you think, and what you want. Lack of boundaries, and this is what we will end with. Lack of boundaries invites lack of respect and lack of value. So that's the end of our workshop for this session. Congratulations on your new healthy boundaries that you are going to start establishing. Be gentle with yourself as you move toward your goals, as you move toward building more boundaries, as you move into those tough conversations, but those loving conversations. Remember, we're supposed to love our enemies. We are we are taught to love everyone as we love ourselves. Love our enemies. Love your frenemies. That doesn't mean you have to like them or be around them or trust them. But you can love them. And that love allows you to be honest. But first of all, I encourage you, love yourself because you're pretty amazing. And develop self-worth and develop self-care. Building boundaries is not selfish, it's self-care. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find me on YouTube, Dr. Nancy Slater channel. You can find me at Psalm31ministries.com on my webpage. You can find me on a Facebook page. I post devotionals there every morning as the start of my day. Thank you so much. And if you would like a booklet emailed to you, send me an email. Psalm31ministries@gmail.com. Have a pleasant day and good luck in your new boundary building. I am so proud of you.